everybody. A warm welcome to Wisdom from North, the place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Jannike, and today I'm here with wonderful Wendy Kennedy, who is an intuitive, an empath, and a channeler. And for 2 decades, Wendy has been using her gifts and abilities to communicate with higher realms and dimensions, and she has been channeling beings like the Pleiadian Collective, the Arcturians, beings from Sirius and Lyra, and even angelic beings. And she has been one of the 6 channelers to be featured in the film and the movie and the book, Tuning In, Spirit Channelers in America. Hello, Wendy. How are you?
Hello, Jannike. I'm very well. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today.
I'm very excited about speaking with you because I have this wall with a list of people I want to interview, and you've been there for ages, and many people have been talking about you and been like asking me to have you on my show. So I'm so excited about this.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited. And, first, let me just say thank you because you have such an amazing body of work with all of the information and the people that you've spoken with, and you're bringing that information to so many people. So thank you for doing that.
And let's just, start by talking about how you got into channeling, because this is actually, I love this topic about our galactic family. So I'm very excited about delving into it. But for those who are new to you and don't know your story, let's hear a little bit about how you just, started channeling.
Yeah, so back in the early mid-90s, I started having these visions, and I didn't know what they were. I didn't know anybody who was channeling, and I really didn't even know what that was. And so I started researching the visions that I was having, and I thought maybe they were a past life, or they were some sort of vision that was associated with the building that I was living in. I was living in an older building in Chicago at the time. And so I started doing some research on that, and I came across channeling, and I just knew I was supposed to be doing it. And so I got a few books, and I did some exercises, and I would have very visceral responses, but I was trying to channel verbally, and it wasn't happening for me. And so I'd put it aside, and then I'd come back to it. And it took me about a year. And in that period, I was doing a lot of work on myself. I was taking meditation classes and just really doing a lot of inner work. And one day I sat down to channel, and I knew I was supposed to have pen and paper, and I was supposed to start writing. And that's where it really kind of took off. And I did that for about 9 months or so. And then I started to hear the words well in advance of what was being spoken or what was being written. And they said it's time to put down the pen and just start speaking verbally. And it wasn't long after that the Pleiadian Collective came in, and they're my primary group that I work with when I work publicly. But like you mentioned, there are a lot of beings that I work with. It depends on what I want to know about. And so it's, I just met some new beings the other day when I sat down before a private session with a client. So a new group came in from Cassiopeia, so that was interesting. So there are always new beings rotating in depending on what I want to learn and what I want to know about. So it's hard to believe, but it's been over 20 years now. And, it's been a real journey.
It's so exciting. I saw some interviews with you when I was doing research on your work, and you said that you mostly channel galactic beings and angelic beings, but not so much channel or have contact with people who have passed on because they're in another realm. And I was wondering, so what kind of realm are they compared to the galactic beings?
Well, what I'm already hearing is that it's kind of a loaded question because it depends on someone who's passed away. It's what aspect of that soul are you connecting with? And usually there's a level of that consciousness, whether you're connecting with that higher aspect or whether you're working with an oversoul. Those have 2 very different perspectives and 2 very different frequencies about them. So a lot of the groups that I work with, they're collectives, and many times they're closer in vibrational resonance and alignment with their oversoul as opposed to a higher self, which is kind of another fragmented version. As we come down from source energy, we're fragmenting. And so those who've crossed over, they're usually that level of consciousness that we're connecting with is slightly lower. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just a different perspective. And part of what I've contracted to do with my guides and these celestial beings is to bring in more information about the celestial energy and some of our galactic history. So it's just a slightly different perspective. Those who bring in more of an angelic energy, they're going to speak to those who align with that vibe. And for me, it was working with the galactic energy specifically. But again, it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different.
Right, right. I understood that it was a big question in a way. And I wanted to ask you today actually about this multidimensionality. Because I hear all the time that or lately, that we exist on different planes at the same time, that we're multidimensional beings, and I hear about starseeds, and then I'm a little bit confused about, are we all, like, each human being, are they a multidimensional being, or is it just certain humans that are also or have this multidimensionality to them?
No, we all do, because ultimately all of us are part of source energy, and then as that we align at different points of existence with a particular identity as we enter into this universal structure of duality. We will align with, as I was saying before, either a higher self, or we'll align with an oversoul perspective. And then each of us has multiple lives going on at the same time. So it might be, a life on Earth. It might be a life in the Pleiades. It might be a life as an angelic being, because it's all concurrent. Time isn't linear. So, and that's a lot for people to kind of wrap their brain around sometimes. I think sometimes your head just hurts trying to think about it. But really, that's all going on concurrently, especially when we think about karma, or we think about, when somebody passes away, what happens?
Right.
Is there a progression into the next life? We're still looking at it from a linear perspective. And the guides always say, we'll answer your question based off of where your perception is right now, but really, that's not how it is, because they don't have to incarnate back in the 1500s and then the 1600s, 1700s. They can incarnate at any point where the soul gets to kind of explore and have the kind of experience that it wants to have. So a soul could choose to go back and, if we're looking at it from a linear perspective, incarnate into the 1300s and then project itself into 3,000 years ahead, and then go back again to 5,000 years back. So it's not necessarily linear. It's just where the soul can go to have the kinds of experiences that it wants to have. So all of us carry this energy, but we don't allow ourselves full access to that because we want to play in this game, this illusion of separation, to see if we could figure out that it is a game. How far can we go in the illusion? And then can we bring ourselves out of it? And that's where we're at right now. We perceive ourselves as being separate, although it's not possible. But in order to play in that illusion, we partition off all of this awareness that we are part of source energy. So we'll say, I'm this little personality right here, and here's my story about who I am and what's happened to me. And then our reality is based off of that. So all of us have all those other lifetimes in different dimensions going on concurrently, but we kind of partition all that off to play the illusion of the game.
Okay, so what about like starseeds then? Aren't we all then starseeds in a way?
In a way, I think so, but I think there are certain energies and certain aspects or certain archetypal patterns that we want to pull in and bring into our experience, and I think that's what gets the label. So there are people who are really what the guides would call earth-oriented. They really like connecting with Mother Earth, being out in nature. They're very, very grounded. And then you've got other people who would rather think about leaving their bodies and being out in other systems. They want to go home and That's a big issue for a lot of us that are stellar oriented, that are star seeds, if you will, that we want to go home, but really it's about bringing that energy of home, which is really source energy, into this physical experience. So you've got people who are pulling in all of these different archetypal patterns or energies, and then we're giving them labels because we love to label everything here because it makes us feel safe. It makes us feel like we understand it.
Right. So the whole concept of reincarnation kind of lost its juice for me when we started speaking about, everything happens right at the same time. Like the past year, I've been hearing that again and again, and now it's just getting more real to me. And I'm like, what about reincarnation then? If I always thought it was behind me. But that's funny because I interviewed a wisdom keeper from the Andes, and he was saying that the past was ahead of him and the future was behind him. So I was like, oh, what? So I guess it is a matter of perception, and that it is my mind that has just agreed to a certain concept, and then it's difficult to get out of it.
Right.
In a way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think for people when they have a really hard time, when they get lost in their head trying to think about it, if you can just kind of imagine that concept as an orb of light and then just drop it down into your heart, that when we're in that space, a lot of the questions and the chatter that we have about really understanding how that works, it just goes away, and we feel content with an answer because there's a part of us that knows that this is really how things are, that time is an illusion that we get trapped in. So, that's something that everybody can do when they feel particularly stuck with this one, because this is a big one. And the guides actually do spend a lot of time talking about the construct of time and how we build each now moment.
Right. So let's speak about the Pleiadians, because I've especially been very drawn to them for some reason. So I just read a little bit online about them, and many are saying that they actually look a bit like us, like human beings, and some of them are very Nordic looking, actually. But then I heard that you are saying that they are not physical. So then I was thinking maybe you are channeling some beings from the Pleiadians, because the Pleiadians are huge. I mean, there's tons and tons of stars there. So I was thinking maybe there are different levels there too.
Yes. So as the guides explain it to me, their system is an open system. It's an open cluster of about 750 stars. So that's a really large system. And, we, again, like to put everything in a tidy little box. And it's actually a very vast system, and there are beings who look very much like us. A lot of the Nordics that you hear, the fifth dimensional Nordics, but there are also reptilians and bird people.
Oh, there are reptilians in the Pleiadians?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought they were somewhere else.
Well, they are, but it's a vast system, and it's varied. And the beings that I work with are actually ninth dimensional, so they don't have physical form. They're beings of light. And rather than incarnating to a planetary body the way that we do, they actually align with a stellar body. So, they're not getting into a physical body and coming down, but rather their consciousness will work with the grid of the star. And they're proficient at working with records and information. They align with Alcyon, which is the central star in the Pleiades. And stars and planets work like libraries. So if you think about us as being kind of the paperback version that has all of our information, we're carrying it around in our field, then planets, the consciousness of the planet will contain the records of all the experiences of all the life that's on the planet, and then that information gets sent to the central star in the system. So ours goes to the sun. The sun would be the equivalent of, say, a main library, and an Earth would be a branch library. And then...
Sorry, are you saying that our information on Earth are going to the sun, our sun?
Correct. Yes.
It's stored there, in a way?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's stored there along with all of the other planetary bodies. They kind of upload that information, and it can be readily found and easily accessed from that level. And then the sun will upload its information to Alcyon. So the particular group that I work with, they're beings of light, and this is what they focus on. They focus on working with the records and sharing information and wisdom. But then there are other groups of Pleiadians who have very different agendas and different paths and things that they want to work on. So I think it's really confusing for a lot of people because they'll get the idea of, oh, well, the Pleiadians are just the Nordics, or this species is only from here or there. Our galaxy is very, very old, and there's been a lot of mixing of different races and species and different dimensions. So, we'll hear one story, but also keep an open mind because it's a very big place. It would be like saying that people from America are only this particular way. They're either light or they're dark, or they're good or they're bad. And in all of these systems, they're both. They're beings who are kind of playing a lighter role or a darker role. So there are all these different agendas going on as well. So it's not that we can really put everybody in one tidy little box.
Yeah, I gotta admit that I thought that when we spoke about the Pleiadians, they were like maybe thousands of years ahead of us in their development, and I was like generalizing the Pleiadians, and I thought the reptilians and the Greys, they came from somewhere else. But it's my mind just trying to categorize things.
And that's when it goes to time, and we're looking for this idea of history, of being a tidy little string, this linear story, and really it doesn't exist that way because time doesn't exist that way. So that's another thing. When you get all this channeled information and one story is vastly different than another story, in some ways we have the same problem here on Earth where our past is always colored by the victor. It's always told by the victor. So you don't always hear another perspective or another side. And you kind of get locked into a version of the story. But the version that you're hearing or that you're tapping into is the one that's most important for you to hear, to apply to your life here and now. Because when we start hearing the stories of, oh, this happened in that system and this happened there, they're just nice stories unless you start paying attention to how you feel about the stories and if there are patterns and lessons and things for you to take away from the story and apply to your own life. And I think that's really important for people to do when they come into contact with channeled information. You've got to use your own discernment and see what resonates with you and how does it apply to your own life.
Right. So what are the Pleiadians that you are channeling? What are they saying about Earth and human beings and why we are here, actually? Like what we're, this is a huge question, but what we are moving towards. Apparently they are observing us and they want to help us. So what do they want to help us with? Like, what's their message to us?
So they talk about Earth in terms of being kind of a grand experiment. And that it was set up, it's the third experiment in our galaxy to see if we could go through this process of descension and reascension, if we could forget who we are, that we are part of source energy, and if we could descend down into this dimension of duality and see if we could come back out. And so we pull in all of these archetypal energies from different parts of our galaxy. And so what they're here to do is to help remind us that we are divine beings of light having this physical experience and really how to use our discernment. That's a big part of their message and how to be autonomous, not just to kind of follow the party line, but really how to learn to tap into our own power and our own wisdom. So really it's about polarity integration. How do you release your judgments? How do you go back to that middle point of source energy? Because everything in this particular universe, it's two sides of the same coin. So how do you go back to seeing yourself as part of the coin as opposed to aligning with a side of the coin, if you will? So a lot of the work that I do with them is in helping to teach people how to look at their judgments and how to see how those judgments serve you, how they can be released, how you can shift your perspective on that so that you can go up to a higher level of awareness.
So I really want to go back and actually hear a little bit about the history of planet Earth, just to cover that a little bit, because it's so exciting. Because I just did an interview with Jamie Price. I don't know if you know her, but she channels Lyran Council of Time. And she told me a little bit about human history. And then I read about you, your work, and you're saying a lot of the same, which I think is very interesting. So can you tell us, because, from my childhood, belief, I thought just God just created us. But then I'm starting to believe that we're kind of created by these other beings, that we are a mixture of them, and that they, like you're saying, we were an experiment. So did actually extraterrestrials create humans?
So there are a couple ways to answer that. So in some ways, yes, because all of us are extraterrestrial as well as being terrestrial. There are aspects of us that are helping to create and shape this world when it was originally created. So Earth had its own kind of blueprint, and it had its own program for growth and unfoldment and development. And when it was decided that Earth would be the location for the third grand experiment, some of that energy was shifted slightly. And the guides talk a lot about the Lyrans first coming here.
Right.
And they describe it in some ways as being kind of a vacation spot for Lyrans, that they wanted to get away and they wanted to experience and things, because there were their own struggles and there were wars that went on in the Lyran system. And so the Lyrans came and they agreed to be part of this dissension project. And that's where a lot of the Lyran energy comes from. So about 400,000 years ago, a lot of that energy was brought to the planet. And then they came down into the fourth dimensional levels. And some of the Lyrans decided at that point to go to other systems, to go back off-world. Some of them merged into Atlantis.
Right.
And
okay.
And then as we came down through Atlantis, people always ask about where do the Anunnaki fit in, and so where do the Nibiruans fit in. And from my understanding, as the guides explain it, at that point, a lot of that energy was on Mars. And they were waiting until the fall of Atlantis, because they saw that things weren't going well, that they were going to take advantage of that. And there was further manipulation that was done with genetic material after that as well. But when Atlantis fell, a lot of that wisdom and energy and information was stored, and it was passed down 12 different lines. And, we're just now bringing all of that back up today. But again, we pull in these archetypal patterns from all of these different systems. So there are 7 major systems with which we most closely align, and that's Sirius, Orion, Lyra, Cassiopeia, Andromeda, Arcturus, and the Pleiades. So those are the 7 big systems where we are pulling a lot of our genetic material from, because part of this game, we played the second experiment out in Sirius, and it didn't go very well. So we thought, if we have more genetic material, along with the genetic material, we'll have the emotional understanding, we'll have the emotional experience. So Earth is a bit different, because on other planets, they don't have the range of emotion that we have here. So the guides always call Earth the planet of emotion. If you want to go learn how to work with emotions, you go to Earth. That's the school for it. So along with these 7 major systems, there are thousands and thousands of worlds that have donated their genetic material. So all the life on Earth is holding all of these patterns and these experiences from all these different systems, that if we had all this variety, they thought it might be a little easier for us to figure out new and subtle ways to work on the issues we weren't able to integrate in other systems, whether it was control or whether it was authority, trust, acceptance, balance. So all of this energy that was deposited here in the form of life, we could access as records and information so that we could try to go through it again here ourselves. And it's really the process that we're going through. This is the nexus point. so that we can pull from all those lifetimes where it didn't go well, where we weren't able to forgive, where we weren't able to release our judgments.
So I guess that's why it's maybe very important for the galactic family to really help us, because they want it to go well this time in a way.
They do, because, and the thing that's hard for us to understand is that they're also learning from us, because we think, oh, they're just teaching us. But really, what we're learning how to do is hold compassion in a way that is, they say the breadth and the depth of the compassion that we're able to access at this level is so much greater than what higher dimensional beings access, which to us may sound a little strange, but because we know how difficult it is, because we know what that pain sensation is, and our heart goes out when you know that somebody else is really truly suffering, because we've had that experience ourselves, that we hold just such a greater container of compassion. And there are beings in our system that, if you look at the Greys, for example, they've lost their ability to access their emotions for a variety of reasons, but they're learning how to access that again through us and with us. And even in the ninth dimension, the Pleiadians say that they're learning so much about compassion in ways that they just hadn't thought about it. So we're also teaching, and because we're holding a whole new level of compassion, it's altering the entire universe.
Wow. Amazing.
Because, all of that information is holographic. So even though I was talking about the libraries being accessible from the Earth level or the star level, all that information is also contained within us. Everything that exists within the universe also exists within us. So as we change, we impact all of that energy.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit about frequencies? Because your website is called Higher Frequencies, and I heard so much about vibrations, frequencies, that's so important, what frequency you're vibrating on, and that actually we are not, like me, I'm not seeing what you're seeing, because I'm not able to look into those frequencies, or maybe I'm not vibrating on the same frequency as you are, and that they are vibrating on another frequency than us, etc. So can you tell us a little bit about, frequencies, what this is and how this works?
So Earth itself has a particular vibratory range, and when we're keeping our consciousness at a particular bandwidth, and when we're holding particular thoughts and beliefs, this is what creates our overall vibratory level. So if you're vibrating within this particular range, you're not going to be able to see any higher than where you're at. So it's actually very, very simple to change your frequency. The problem is that we don't maintain it. So if you want to shift your frequency, if you want to elevate it, it's really about moving out of the mind, the egoic mind, and moving into the heart center. So to do that, all you have to do is really think of something that makes you smile. And the guides usually recommend thinking of an animal, usually a baby animal, because that for most of us is going to put us right in that space. And when we get there, we usually feel really lighthearted or tingly, or we just feel really expanded. And it's in this space that we let go of all the limiting beliefs that lower our overall frequency. So it's not even so much that you have to figure out what your blocks are or your issues are. It's just about staying in vibrational alignment, because the essence of who you are is like this really beautiful light that is constantly inside you, pulsing out, and it's divinely perfect. It's that spark of source. And then we cover it up to play this game with all these limiting beliefs. It's like having a dirty window. And if you're standing on the outside and the light from inside the house is trying to shine out, it's going to look pretty dim if the windows are closed or if the windows are dirty. But when you start to clean those off, when you start to let go of those limiting beliefs, or if you shift into that space where you're in your heart center, they go away completely, then that light can shine out brightly. And the way that we create reality is that it's a reflection of our vibrational state. So if that bright light or that intense high frequency is shining out, that's what we're going to get back as our reality. That's how we create and manifest. So if you want to access the higher realms and you want to see, you want to see,
I want to see them.
Yeah, you want to see them. And to be honest, it's all about frequency. Everything vibrates, but what we do when we channel, and all of us have the ability to do this, is that we take that frequency as it comes to us and we interpret it through one of the senses. So for most of us, we're going to see it, we're going to hear it, or we're going to feel it. I have met some people who taste, all right? They can taste or smell the energy, but most of us are going to run it through, we're going to hear it, we're going to see it, or we're going to feel it in our body. And we also have that sense of claircognizance, and I don't really give that a label because we're not running it through one of the senses, but all of us have the ability to do that. So when you are able to align with that authentic self, you either do it by putting yourself in your heart center or by letting go of those judgments that you're holding, then you can start to see into the higher realms because you're moving yourself out of that range and you're opening up to receive those higher frequencies. They're always coming down. They're always around us. We're just not open to perceiving it because we have to work with a different operating system. We have to work with the heart instead of the egoic mind.
And you're saying that everyone can channel, and what I have understood is that it's very important to go into the heart space, which you also mentioned, and to let go and to get into your heart. But I'm wondering how you do that when we have all these belief systems, and I mean, they can be pretty stuck there from your childhood or anything that are very real to you. And so I think in one way it's easy to raise my frequency for 5 seconds or 10 seconds and smile, but then my story catches up with me and I'm like, well, it's never going well with this or that. I mean, it's just an example. And I found that these belief systems, they are really strong. Like, even though you are aware of them, you still believe in them because it's like you have this record or these experiences that show you that every time you did this happens. So it would kind of be a fairy tale to think otherwise. So I guess my question is actually, before we go into the heart space, like, how can you actually start to release old belief systems that don't serve you?
So there are a couple of ways that you can do this. One is to see actually how it does serve you, because even those limiting beliefs you're holding on to, because in some way, even if it's some neurotic belief that you think that it's helping you, and it may be helping you to stay safe. Maybe you're afraid of being seen or you're afraid of being persecuted, but you want to get out and you want to speak in front of people, and it's not happening because you've got this persecution program running. So the desire to stay safe is stronger than the desire to do the work at the moment because it's so primal. So it's really looking at how it serves you. Is it logical? Maybe not, because a lot of this stuff comes from other lifetimes, and we reinitialize those programs early on in childhood, sometimes even in womb. And we don't really have a point that we can say, oh, I set up my belief right here. So it's seeing, all right, so how does this serve me? And you can ask the subconscious, the way that holding this belief serves me is, and you can either write it out or speak it aloud. That's going to help you to get in touch with the subconscious more than just having that conversation in your head. So that's one way. And then you can ask yourself how you want to repattern it, how you want to perceive it, what the new belief system you want to hold on to is, and then just keep reinforcing that. The guides say that it's really not necessary for you to go and figure out where something started. Your awareness that it's going on, and the fact that you're conscious that you've got a pattern is huge, and that's half the way there to shifting it. So if you say, all right, I know I keep holding this belief and I know it doesn't really serve me, so what do I want instead? It really is about practice, and it's about repetition. So what is it that you want? If you know that you've got a control issue and you feel like you have to control everything, and what you want to work on is, I want to trust. I want to trust in myself, in my discernment. And by trusting in myself, I know that anything that I encounter, whether it's somebody who maybe doesn't have my highest good in mind, or whether it's any situation, I'll know, I'll have a sense that, oh, this isn't really what I want to do, or this isn't going to be good for me. And I'll know that I need to take action in another way. So you just start working with that energy and imagining it, and imagining what it would feel like. What will happen sometimes is the inner critic gets a little busy saying, no, we're not that way. And life doesn't work this way. So one way you can work around it is by saying, all right, well, what if it did? How would it feel if? And as you just start imagining that sensation, it doesn't matter whether you actually believe that's the way it is or you're imagining that's the way it is, you're still aligning and pulsing out the frequency. So, the guides always suggest this because it really is going back and letting go of those old programs. Yes, something might have happened repeatedly because your belief systems weren't different. You kept holding the same belief system, so you kept getting the same results. So you have to keep putting this in place, and sometimes it takes a while for it to start showing up, because again, you might have that illusionary belief that, oh, it's more important for me to be this other thing, this safety thing. Some beliefs can be kind of chained together. They can be bound together. And when you pull on one, it's like a house of cards. If you can find the corner card and you pull that, the whole thing comes down. But otherwise, you're taking them off one by one. It doesn't matter. You're going to get it done anyway. You're going to have the house dismantled, but it's just about how your soul feels most comfortable, or you at the ego level feel most comfortable about taking that apart and creating something else. Now, the more you practice what the frequency is that you want, you start to override those subconscious habits and belief systems. And that's one thing the guides have talked a lot about in the last, probably the last year and a half. That some of us will do our meditations in the morning, or we'll do it again at night, but we're not doing it through the day. We're not checking in through the day. So, we might be really up in the morning, and then we get to work and we start dealing with people, and we just start going downhill until we get to the end of the day and we're at rock bottom. And it takes a lot of energy to get back up. So if we start out, we check in. If we check in periodically through the day, how do I feel? Do I need to recenter myself? What's going on physically, emotionally, mentally? Is my body telling me that I have tension in it? My emotions, am I feeling in a funk? Am I sad? Am I blue? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Or is my inner critic busy back there going, this stuff never changes. You're not good at this. Those are the kinds of tweaks that we need to make. So when we go up, we might drop out, but we'll make that adjustment and go back up. So by the time we get to the end of the day, we're much higher, and we're able to recalibrate and get where we want to be instead of it being such an effort. And the more often you're checking in, it starts to become a habit. And this is what fifth dimensional existence is. It's about being conscious every single moment of where your energy is. So if you want to get better at it, you got to start checking in more regularly. You don't have to spend 20 minutes of meditation. You can spend 30 seconds putting yourself back in your heart center and shifting your perspective again. So it's not about these long periods of time where we're doing these exercises. It's about maintenance of frequency more repeatedly through the day.
Right. Awareness and practice.
Yeah.
Well, that's a relief that you don't necessarily have to find what happened and when I was 3 years old,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was wondering, maybe if it was would be possible that you could bring the Pleiadians in if
Sure.
they're here.
They're almost always around.
They are.
Yes, they're definitely here.